So lastly, on to the topic. It's very, very, very important. I have families and patients ask me all the time about Social Security. It can be very confusing and overwhelming, especially when you're trying to navigate the application process, when you have a chronic illness, and you're dealing with transplant. We've had 2 presentations by this law firm before, and they were extremely helpful and beneficial for both our transplant social workers that we work with, as well as our transplant patients and families. So we felt that making this more widely available through Zoom would be a really good idea. So without further ado, I'll introduce our speaker today, and a little bit, and then he'll go into his presentation about Social Security disability for transplant. So Tom Giordano heads Pond Lehockey Disability, Pond Lehockey Social Security Disability Department. He's admitted to practice law in Pennsylvania and New Jersey and before the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey and the Northern District of Texas. He earned his undergraduate degree cum laude in communications studies from Towson University in Maryland. He received his law degree from Rutgers University School of Law in Camden. Tom currently serves on the board of directors of the Philadelphia Trial Lawyers Association as the co-chair of the Social Security Disability section of the Philadelphia Bar Association and as the immediate past chair of the Social Security Disability Committee of the American Association of Justice. He's a sustaining member of the National Organization of Social Security Claimants Representatives and is an active member of the Pennsylvania Bar Association. So, Tom.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, first off, I want to thank Talia and the Gift of Life Donor Program. What an amazing organization, and it's just an honor to be able to speak with everyone today. Number one, I hope you can hear me okay. Number two, I am going to apologize ahead of time if any crazy kids break into my room here. I, like most people, have been working from home for the last month or so. That has presented some challenges. Childcare has been the number one challenge we've dealt with here. So first, I hope everybody is safe. What a crazy time we're in right now, but it has given me an opportunity to do more of these webinars, which I'm really happy to do. I typically present on Social Security disability throughout the country. The one good thing about Social Security disability is it's a federal program, and that means it's the same in every state. And we handle cases in every state. So wherever you are today, I'm in Pennsylvania, but wherever you are, the rules of Social Security are the same. So with that little introduction, I'll give you one attorney caveat here, okay? This is just an educational piece. This is not an end-all be-all in Social Security. I mean, we can talk about Social Security and SSI for days upon days. This is just a general overview. And most importantly, I want you to know that I'm available for questions, and I know Talia is going to keep the questions. We'll try to answer as many as possible. If we miss a question you have, feel free after this. I'll give you my email. You can email me directly if you have any questions, okay? So let's get started. I hope you all can see the screen. The introduction is, when should you consider filing for Social Security disability benefits? It's a question I get asked often. Now, if you're an adult, and you have any health issues that are affecting your ability to work, you should absolutely consider Social Security disability. And now for children, and we're not going to spend too much time on children, but if you're a parent of a disabled child who's on the call today, this will be a little relevant for you. If your child has health issues that have affected their development in some way, that's when you should consider Social Security disability. What I typically counsel all of my clients and all of my potential clients is I truly believe that working is always going to be the better option for someone. However, there are definitely times when you just cannot do that anymore. And when you can't do it anymore, when you can't work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week on a consistent basis, I think Social Security disability absolutely must be something that you should consider. So let's get my rhetoric out of the way, okay? Because I get a little frustrated when people, and trust me, it happens all the time, when people say, this is a handout, okay? I don't want a government handout. Well, here's what I can tell you. This is absolutely not a handout because you have paid into the Social Security Trust Fund with every single paycheck you've ever received. Okay, so for many of you, if you've worked 20, 30, 40 years, 6.2% of all of your checks have gone into the Social Security Trust Fund. You've essentially bought a private disability policy. You know, you've also bought a retirement program, which most people know about. They know about Social Security retirement, and they know about Medicare when you turn 65. But what a lot of people don't realize is that 6.2%, those FICA taxes, they actually go in and they're funding the disability portion, that if you can't work, you can apply for disability. So don't believe those people who say this is a handout. It's really not. You paid into the system, okay? Very important. For purposes of this presentation, we're going to use the letters SSDI and SSI, okay? There are two different programs under the same Social Security umbrella. SSDI is simply the program for people who have worked and paid into the Social Security system, okay? SSI is for people who've never paid into the system or haven't paid into the system in a long time, or children who haven't had the ability to work. That's SSI, because you haven't paid 6.2% of your paycheck into the system. So it's very important, that distinction, because I can't tell you when people come to me or we talk on the phone and they say, I want to apply for SSI. Well, if you've worked and you've paid into Social Security all your life, you're not applying for SSI, you're applying for SSDI. Let's go to the next slide here. So by paying into Social Security for at least 5 out of the last 10 years of your life, if you've worked and paid into the system 5 out of the last 10 years, you've earned the right to apply for Social Security disability insurance benefits, SSDI, okay? Who qualifies for SSDI? Well, number one, you have to have medical conditions that prevent you from doing the job you have performed, okay? That's important. Number two, and maybe the most important thing, you should be receiving medical treatment for those conditions. Now, I get phone calls from a lot of people all over the country. They'll say to me, Tom, I've been dealing, and I'll give you an easy example. I've been dealing with bad knees for the last 3 years. And one of my first questions are you treating with a doctor? And if they're not, that's a big problem, because you can have every medical condition under the sun, but if we don't have medical records to support that condition, we absolutely have a problem. So that is important. Having medical conditions is important. But probably the number one checklist item is you can't be working, or at the very minimum, you can't be earning more than $1,260 a month gross. That's important. We'll get back to that, I promise you. Okay, so who qualifies for SSI? So for SSI, that's a little different because you haven't paid into the system, right? You haven't paid into the system. So you haven't earned those credits to apply. So this is where the government will say to you, this is a needs-based program. You can't apply for SSI if you're an individual and you have more than $783 per month coming in to you in some kind of income. Now, if you're married, if you have more than $1,175 a month coming in, you can't apply for SSI. So it's needs-based. The easiest way I can explain this to anybody is if you qualify for Medicaid, if you qualify for welfare in your state, you typically will qualify for SSI. Okay, so if you have resources, let's say you're a single individual who has $5,000 in the bank. You have no income, but you have $5,000 in the bank. That $5,000 is going to preclude you from applying for SSI. If you're a married couple and you have more than $3,000 in a account, in a bank account, a savings account, stocks, bonds, et cetera, you don't qualify for SSI. So for SSI, I put it in bold on the bottom of the slide here. To become eligible for SSI, you and your family's income and resources matter. What are the benefits of SSI? So with SSI, unlike SSDI, you have a capped monthly amount. The capped monthly amount is $783. Now, if you've paid into Social Security your entire life, you can actually receive up to $2,700 a month in disability benefits. But for SSI, it's $783 is the max. One of the benefits of receiving SSI is you get your Medicaid insurance card as soon as you're found disabled. Okay, so that's important as well. Now, children in SSI, I'm going to just glance over this very, very briefly, but you must have a medical condition if you're a child that has lasted or is expected to last at least 1 year. And what this requires is Social Security wants to see if your child is working, which typically they're not, the severity of his or her impairment, and whether the impairment results in what they call marked and severe functional limitations. We can spend hours on just what a marked and a severe functional limitation is, but if you're interested in learning about SSI for your child, this is what we would discuss, and this is something that you might want to research. Okay, so let's get back to the individual who has worked, paid into the system, and now is thinking about applying for Social Security disability. There is a 5-step process that every single claim, every single Social Security disability claim throughout the country will go through, okay? And these 5 steps are very important because for many of them, if you don't get past that, the first step, you can't go to the second step. So it's important that we go in order. And this is the 5-step process that you're seeing right now on your screen. We will go through each one individually, okay? So let's start with step 1. Are you out of work? So an individual cannot apply for Social Security disability unless they are either out of work or earning less than $1,260 per month in gross wages. Now, gross wages is an important, that word gross is important because you gotta remember that's before tax. So if you are working right now and your before tax income is $1,260 or more, you cannot apply. But if it's under $1,260 or 0, you absolutely can apply and get past the first step. Now this bullet point right underneath is important. So I always try to use, let's use somebody who's had a heart transplant, okay? If you've had a heart transplant, typically that's gonna be an automatic disability award, and we'll get to that soon. But if you're working and you're earning somehow over $1,260 a month in gross wages in 2020, you're not going to be eligible for disability benefits because of your work earnings. So that's why step 1 is you're either out of work or you're earning under their threshold, okay? Step 2, the severity and duration requirement. So here is where Social Security wants to weed out individuals who don't really have significant injuries. Before the coronavirus, an example I would give was the flu. If somebody has the flu, and anybody who's had the flu knows, it really knocks you out for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, sometimes even longer. But that's not going to be enough for disability. Just like if you break an ankle, if you break a leg, if you break a hand, you might be out of work for maybe a month, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. But Social Security disability really wants people who have medical conditions that's going to keep them out of work for 12 months. Now, does that mean you have to wait until you are out of work for 12 months to apply? Absolutely not. Okay, so I will tell you, if you have a serious medical condition and if you're out of work for even a day, but you don't think you're going to get back to work anytime soon, Social Security disability is the right avenue for you. Do not, and I really mean this, do not wait 12 months of being out of work to apply. And the main reason why I would suggest that for you to not wait is because the process of Social Security can take well over a year. So I will always counsel my clients, if they call me and they say, Tom, I've been out of work now for a week. Let's say I have cancer. I don't think I'm getting back. I'm going to have radiation treatment, chemotherapy. Should I wait? Absolutely not. Apply now. Look, even if you go back to work within the next 12 months, we still may be able to work with your claim. And even if you go back to work and things are fine, we could just pull your claim, no harm, no foul. But please do not wait. If you're out of work right now, please do not wait to apply if you think you need to wait for 12 months. Just absolutely not necessary. So this is an important step for anybody who has been either, whether yourself or your family have had to deal with a transplant, okay? Step 3. Step 3 is, does your condition meet or equal the listing for that condition? Now, I want you to imagine a book that Social Security has, a blue book that has 10,000 medical conditions in it, okay? And within those medical conditions is a list of certain symptoms, signs, impairments that if your condition meets or equals that list, you're automatically found disabled, okay? So your analysis on the 5-step 5-step process that we started out with stops here, because if you meet or equal that listing, you automatically win. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. Most people don't meet or equal a listing, so they have to go on to the 4th step. But for specific dealing with transplants, okay? Well, actually, let me stop for a second. This is the list of the categories of all listings. So this is the list of the listings. Doesn't really sound right, but this is what it is. So 1.00, any musculoskeletal issue you can think of is under there. 2.00, speeches, senses, special senses and speech. 3.00, respiratory system, so any pulmonary issues. 4.00, cardiovascular, any heart issues. The book is long, the book is big, but if you have a specific condition that, like I said, either meets or equals the condition listed there, you automatically win. Now, a lot of these listings have transplant listings, okay? So under 6.00 is 6.04, chronic kidney disease with kidney transplant. So if you've had chronic kidney disease and you've had a kidney transplant, they're going to consider you disabled for 1 year following the transplant. It's almost automatic. So I put the notes there. Those are actually Social Security's notes explaining this listing to you. So if you receive a kidney transplant, we will consider you to be disabled under this section. After that, they're going to evaluate for 1 year. So after that 1 year is up, they're going to evaluate your residual impairments by considering your post-transplant function, any rejection episodes. So what is this saying? This is saying if you've had a transplant, if you have chronic kidney disease, and you have medical records showing you've had all these, you're pretty much going to win your case for at least a year. And you can probably keep on those benefits after a year if your medical records show that you're having residual issues. Because look, if you're perfect after a year, get back to work. That's fantastic. But it doesn't always happen. What I try to do here is to let you know that there's always an equivalent for children. And for children, the listing is 106.04. So the adult is 6.04, the child listing is 106.04. There's also a liver transplantation listing. So if you've had a liver transplant, you're considered under disability for 1 year following the date of the transplantation, okay? Then after that, after a year, they'll evaluate your residual impairments by considering the adequacy of post-transplant liver function, the requirement for post-transplant antiviral therapy, et cetera, et cetera. Again, that's all proven by medical records. There's clearly a heart transplant listing as well. Now, for the heart transplant, you're considered disabled for 1 year following surgery, and then again, after the year, they're going to evaluate your residual impairment under the appropriate listings. And I left some points there. And this next slide is really important because you may be on the wait list for an organ transplant and still meet or equal a listing. So I only focused on the listings that specifically meant you had a transplant, but there are other listings for your medical condition that you may meet or equal while you're waiting. So it's very important. Okay, so what if your condition does not meet or equal a listing? Now, if your condition does not meet or equal a listing, I do not want you to be upset, disappointed. It happens, I'd say 95% of the time that individuals do not meet the listing, okay? So if you're an adult, we go on to step 4. Now, if you're a child, this is where it's a little different. This is where we try to provide evidence of marked and severe limitations, which I spoke about, but I'm not going to get into the child portion of this. Tally and I were speaking prior to the start of this program, and she said most of the individuals are adults, and I felt it was appropriate to just keep it to the adult listings, okay? But if you have questions on children, we can speak after. Okay, so step 4. So let me backtrack for a second, and I apologize if I'm going too fast, too slow. There's 5 steps. Step 1, you're out of work or you're earning less than $1,260 per month. Step 2, your medical condition is severe enough that we think it's going to last 12 months or longer. Step 3, meeting or equaling the listing. So you're out of work, your condition's severe, but you don't meet or equal a listing. Now we go to step 4. And this is where the Social Security Administration is asking, does your condition keep you from performing your past work? They define your past work as any work that you've done for pay over the last 15 years. So I've been an attorney for 16 years now. So my past work is that of an attorney. So the work I did in a restaurant, the work I've done delivering newspapers, that's not going to count. The last 15 years of my life, I've been an attorney. That's my past work. So the question becomes, and we'll use me as an example, does my medical condition or conditions keep me from being an attorney? Now, typically, you're not going to apply for disability unless your medical condition is keeping you from performing your work, or else you wouldn't need to apply, right? So most people get past this step. It's the last step. It's step 5 that's really the problem. But I hope that makes sense, okay? So that's step 4. So let's assume for the purposes of this presentation that everybody on this call who's interested in disability or thinking about it can't perform the work they've done in the past. Let's talk about the hardest step, and that's, does your condition keep you from performing any work in the national economy? Now that is a ridiculous burden, right? It's the most difficult step to overcome. This is where most individuals, and I'm sure you've heard the rumors, Social Security denies everybody the first time. That's not necessarily true. We can get into that. But most people get denied at this step because, okay, Tom, you might not be able to be an attorney, but can you say hello to somebody who walks into Walmart? Can you collect, and I don't even know if this job exists anymore, can you collect towels in a locker room? Can you be a cashier? You know, think of jobs that maybe are not as severe as the jobs that you did are physical. So, you know, we deal with a lot of people in unions, construction trades, plumbing, roofing. A lot of individuals get hurt. They can't do that job, but could they do something where they're sitting in a desk like I do? You know, maybe they can, and that's where Social Security denies them. Now, they don't care. This is where I think Social Security gets a little unfair. They do not care if the job that you were doing paid you a lot of money and the job they think you can do pays you very little. They don't care about that. They only care about, can you physically or mentally perform the job? So age does matter, and I can't see everybody on this call, so don't get mad at me. And I promise you, I'm not suggesting that 50 is old, okay? But Social Security does have a line of demarcation at 50 years old that people who are 50 to 54 and then 55 and older, it gets a little easier. And I love this rule because I really think this is a rule that makes sense. Now, we got to remember when Social Security came about, right? So obviously FDR, this was his great program, but the disability portion came about probably during the Eisenhower administration. But even then, okay, even in the late 50s, early 60s, our life expectancy wasn't as long as it is right now. So 50 years old was you're getting close to the end of your life. Now we would consider that middle age, right? So if you're 50 and older, it gets a little easier. You don't have to prove you can't do all those other jobs. But if you're under 50, you pretty much, and this is it's not a blanket statement, but it's pretty accurate. You pretty much have to prove you can't do anything 8 hours a day, 5 days a week on a consistent basis. So that's why it's a little bit more difficult for under 50 individuals versus over 50 individuals. Now, if you're over 66 years old, if you're over your full retirement age, then you can apply for disability. And the reason is you don't need to. You can just get your Social Security full retirement because those numbers are the same. So if you ever want to know how much you would receive in disability benefits, it's pretty much equivalent to what your full retirement at 66 and a half is. This is something that I think is extremely important to always bring up in every presentation that I do. There are so many misconceptions about Social Security, okay? First off, it is not a life-term sentence. So for individuals who are dealing with some major medical conditions right now, it's there for you for as long as you have the medical conditions. If you get better, If you want to go back to work, they want you to go back to work. They will even give you incentives to try to work and still not take your benefits away. So I don't want you to think that if you go on SSDI, you're going to have this scarlet letter hanging around your neck that says, I'm disabled. Nobody's going to know you're disabled. Nobody has to know you're disabled. It's absolutely private. And again, it's only for as long as you need it. Now, if you need it for years and years and years, it's there for you. But again, I don't want you to be scared off by any stigma of disability or the nature of how long it can last. It really is about you and your medical condition. So that's important to know. I can't say this enough, okay? Now, you can speak to any attorney in the world, and they may say, well, an attorney is really important. Maybe. I'm going to tell you what the most important person is in your Social Security case, and that is your physician, okay? That is your doctor. You need to see your doctor. I mean, obvious reasons, right? Obvious reasons. If you have a serious medical condition, especially if you're dealing with an issue or one of your major organs needs to have, a transplant, you need to go to a doctor. You are going to a doctor. Your medical records are so important. So the fact that you're going to the doctor, the fact that you're treating, the fact that you're being open and honest, I think that is a really important point that often doesn't get stated enough. When you go to the doctors, probably the biggest mistake you can make would just be saying, I'm the same. I'm okay. No better, no worse. I'm sure your doctor would say that they want you to be specific. And I could tell you, as a lawyer who reads medical records all day, it's so important for me to see my client's complaints, to see how my client is doing pre-transplant and post-transplant. It's just extremely important to see that there are still symptoms or complaints going on, because the Social Security Administration is going to look at those records and they're going to treat them as gospel, because that's all they really have. So when you go to the doctor, well, first off, go to the doctor. Go as prescribed. So try not to miss appointments. I know we are in such an unprecedented time right now where a lot of doctors aren't seeing patients, but many are going to telemedicine. I just did a little podcast on this recently. If you have the ability to do it, I would strongly suggest that you ask your doctor if he or she is participating through telemedicine, and you do it. Because even a checkup through the computer like we're doing today is important. I just can't over or understate the importance of medical treatment. It's so important. So I just spoke, I think, for a half hour straight. And we didn't get interrupted by kids, which is a fantastic thing. This is really a disability program is really a great program. The government, whatever side of the aisle you're on, the social programs sometimes get a lot of flack, but this is a program that, number one, we fund, okay? We fund it. And number two, I think it's really important that we have it, because there are situations in life where you can't work. And this is an option for you. If you don't have a long-term disability policy, if you don't have a short-term disability policy, you have a Social Security disability policy. And really, I didn't state this enough, but it can be any medical condition under the sun. I've gotten thousands of individuals disability for back, neck, and shoulder and knee pain, diabetes, heart disease, mental health issues, cancer, MS, lupus, anything you can imagine. Any medical condition that's keeping you from working is something that should be considered. It's not a life sentence. It's really important that you know your rights. I thank you for your attention today. I hope I didn't go too fast. I hope I wasn't too confusing. Again, I could stick around. Talia, you tell me if you want me to answer some questions. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. So there are some questions that we can go through. There's actually like 6 or 7.
Okay.
So the first one, and you and I talked very briefly about this in the beginning. So Social Security had, so they've submitted their application, and then they got a note from Social Security suggesting that Social Security was suspending work on disability reviews.
Yeah.
So what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, good question. So if you are awarded disability, typically every 3 to 5 years, they're supposed to get around to reviewing you to see if you're still disabled, if you're still having problems that are keeping you from working. Whoever sent that question in, let them know it is a good thing that they're suspending it, because it just means they don't have the resources right now, because as you can imagine, just like we are, they're working from home. They're working understaffed. So they're just not going to get around to reviewing them as quickly. So that means that individual who is under review will just continue to get their benefits until they get around to reviewing it. So it's really not that big of a deal. But if that individual hasn't seen their doctor in a while, or hasn't expressed any symptoms or problems that they may be dealing with, this is a good time to try to do that, because what they're gonna do is, if you've been on disability, they're gonna order your medical records from the time you've been on it to now, and they're gonna see if you've been complaining or dealing with some of the same problems that you got disability for.
So what if they had just sent the application in initially? Like they sent their first application in and now they're saying things are moving slow.
Well, they are. So what we do is we help people from the application all the way to the hearing level in federal court. There's some really positive news. The positive news is that the Social Security Administration is still processing claims. So if you've applied for it, you're going to get a decision. But again, we're dealing with 60,000 staff members throughout the country who are now working from home. It's just everything is slower. So they'll get a decision. It's just probably going to be, we typically would tell our clients, if you applied today, you'll have a decision within 4 to 6 months. That may be extended now by an extra month or so, just because of COVID-19 and all the issues we've been dealing with.
But if you apply today, that would potentially be like the start date of your disability.
It would be the start date of the process. No, because one of the questions that they ask you in the disability application is, when did you stop working because of your medical condition? And that is the date that they use as the date of disability, alleged disability.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a little different.
So is there a limit to how far back that will go?
It's a great question. So from the payment perspective, there's a limit. They'll only go back 12 months. But what I would tell everybody in the audience today is, if you've been out of work and it's getting close to being 5 years out of work, you better apply, because what happens is, by not paying into the system every paycheck like you've done your whole career, you're actually now losing your insurance a little bit. So after 5 years, you stop being insured for disability. So it makes it much harder to apply and win. So if you're out of work, you got about a 5-year window where you can apply for disability and may not have an issue. But after 5 years, it does get difficult. Not impossible, but difficult.
Okay. So what would be the benefit of trying to speak with your team about applying? Yes. And what would be the drawback?
Yeah. So I'm on a couple boards of nonprofits. So this is really important to me. This is not a sales pitch, and I never want it to be, because if it is, never invite me back. If you've had a transplant, your chances of success, as I indicated in the presentation, are pretty good, almost automatic. So you don't need an attorney. You don't need an attorney to apply at all. You could do that online. You used to be able to do it in office. Hopefully someday we'll be able to get back to the Social Security office. But I would even suggest, even if COVID goes away, you don't want to visit the Social Security office, do it online. I think the thing is, when you're dealing with medical conditions, when you're dealing with stress, you want someone to help you navigate all those forms. That's where I think an attorney really adds value. And I also think if you're going to pick an attorney, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a specialist, go to a disability specialist, okay? It's just like you wouldn't want to go to a family doctor for your heart, maybe in the beginning, but you'd want to go to a specialist after. An attorney can help you navigate the forms all the way to a hearing. You definitely don't want to go to a hearing without an attorney. People do it all the time. And what the judges will do is they'll say, look, I'm going to give you a continuance to find an attorney. Go find one, because I don't want you coming here without one. But you could do this whole process on your own. I wouldn't recommend it. The one good thing I like about this is, you got to think of it this way. Social Security, if you're applying for it, you're at a pretty bad place in your life. You're in pain, you're stressed out, you're out of work. So the last thing you want to think about is paying an attorney. You don't want, I don't have any money. I'm out of work. How am I going to pay you? What I love about the program is that we're in it together. So if you hire an attorney, it's 100% a contingent fee. So you have to win for the attorney to get paid. And the attorney only gets paid from the retroactive money that you have accumulated from waiting so long. And it's a one-time fee of 25% of whatever back money you get, but it's capped. 25% is capped at $6,000. So the attorney will get a check directly from Social Security of a percentage of your back money. And then every month you get a Social Security disability check, that's all yours. So it does make it a little bit of an easier pill to swallow, so to speak, to hire an attorney when you're not paying anything out of pocket.
Yeah, that's very true. So then another question was, and I'm going to combine two questions.
Sure.
One was they applied for disability retirement through work. And then another question is what's the difference between like SSDI and your retirement you receive after 65?
Okay, so the first question was they applied for what type of program through work?
It says disability retirement through their HR, but I don't know exactly.
That might be short. I mean, I don't know. It's a little odd. It might be short-term disability because some employers provide for short-term. Now, it's exactly what it means, short-term, 5 to 6 months tops. And then what do you do? So if you've applied for short-term through your employer, I would absolutely suggest that if you don't think you're getting back to work anytime soon, apply for disability at the same time. And then I think your second question was, what's the difference between disability and then your just normal retirement?
Mm-hmm. Well, like through the government.
Yeah, that's an easy answer. So at 62, you can start collecting retirement, and all you got to do is prove you're 62. But for disability, you have to prove that you're disabled. You have to go through those 5 steps that I went through. The difference is retirement, it's just you hit that age where you're allowed to get it. Disability, you can apply for disability at any age from 18 to 66, and you can get what's equivalent to your full retirement in disability benefits.
Okay. I'm sorry if you said this while I was reading some other questions. So, but you can't get retirement and SSDI at the same time.
So you can, it's a little tricky. So you're 62 and you've applied for early retirement. You can also get Social Security disability, but you won't get full amounts of both. You'll get your early retirement amount and you'll get a little bit of disability so that it equals what you would get at 66.
Okay.
But what I said in my presentation is you don't need to apply for disability if you're 66 or older, because at that point you just can get your full retirement.
Okay. And then I think this would be beneficial to just touch on really quickly for all of the organs. So heart, liver, kidneys, lungs, pancreas. Yeah. Are they all 1 year post-transplant unless the doctor indicates that it's longer?
Yeah, that automatic listing is, I'm sorry, my apologies for not looking at the other major organs too. I should have done that beforehand. My initial gut is they typically all are 1 year, and again, that 1 year is just automatic. The odds are it's going to take longer than 1 year, right? I think. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but in my experience, I've seen that the progress. It's just not a year doesn't just become you're automatically just fine. So it's not difficult to keep your benefits continuing after that year. But of course, you have to be seeing your doctor. It has to be documented, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Now, you did mention SSI and immediately getting Medicaid. Can you touch on really quickly Medicare and how one would get?
It's interesting. I think I skipped that slide by accident. So there's the benefits of SSDI are you get a higher amount of money depending on what you paid into. You get Medicaid. Now there's a little bit of a disadvantage there. I mean, you get Medicare, but you get little disadvantages. you have to wait 24 months from the date you're found disabled to get Medicare. So you get good insurance. You get insurance that you would typically only get at 65, but you have to wait 24 months from the date you're found disabled. So that's a little difficult. One of the benefits of SSDI, though, is your dependent children under the age of 18 will get benefits in addition to you. So, let's use me as an example. I have 4 children under the age of 18. So if I'm getting Social Security benefits, let's say I'm getting $2,000 a month, my 4 children will split $1,000 between them. So 250, 250, 250 each. And then as each one hits 18, the 3 will split 1,000, and then so on and so forth. Now with SSI, your children, unfortunately, if you have dependent children, get nothing. So those are some of the differences between the 2 programs.
Okay, so SSI is Medicaid immediately, SSDI is Medicare 2 years.
Now, that 2 years sounds scary, but the process sometimes can take 1.5 years. So by the time you get awarded, you're sometimes already automatically eligible for Medicare.
Okay. Someone had asked if you could talk about if you know anything about the Ticket to Work program.
Yeah. So after you are found disabled, it's completely optional. Social Security Administration will say, do you want to participate in the Ticket to Work program? And the most important thing about the Ticket to Work program is they will provide you vocational counseling so that let's say you were doing a job that you just can't do anymore physically or mentally. And you've never done anything else. They'll give you some vocational training to try other work, and they'll even give you opportunities to find jobs, because what their goal is to eventually get you off of disability and back into the workforce, which is a fine goal. What I would suggest for people is it's completely up to you. You have absolutely no pressure to go in the Ticket to Work program. You can do it on your own. So I've had many clients who've said, I didn't do the Ticket to Work program, but I started feeling better. I started throwing some feelers out there for work. I'm trying it. And the Social Security Administration will give you a 9-month trial work period where you can go and make money and still keep your benefits. And if you're able to sustain work, great. And if you're not, you go right back on, your check keeps going.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a few people asked this question. So if they are getting close to retirement age, or they were receiving retirement at like 62 and then were deemed disabled at 63 and then got disability benefits, like once they hit like full retirement age at 66, I guess, will their payments be reduced? Like, will they lose money?
No. The best example I can give is if let's say you're 55 years old and you're eligible for disability benefits, you will get that disability benefit until you're 66. And then you'll get the same amount of money. It'll just be considered retirement instead of disability. So at 66, you go off the disability rolls and you go on to the retirement rolls. Nothing changes.
Okay. So one person asked, what if they're denied? So then they could go into an appeal process?
Yes. I should probably scream this from the mountaintops. 70% of people get denied on the first try. You have to keep going. Like, do not stop. Do not throw your hands up and say, I'm never going to get it. Don't reapply. Keep the train rolling, because it just takes so long. So if you get denied on their first try, you got to file something called a reconsideration. And then the reconsideration process almost mimics the exact process you just went through. An adjudicator will review your records. They'll look at your paperwork. They'll make a decision. You'll probably get denied again, and then you go in front of a judge. But always appeal. You have 60 days after any decision to appeal. My recommendation is just keep it going. Don't get discouraged. Keep it going.
Okay. Someone had asked, sort of in the same realm, so they had a heart transplant, they were approved for SSDI, but with an adverse onset date. Should they appeal the onset date?
That's a great question, and that's a tricky question. I mean, it depends on whether the medical records prior to the date that they were found disabled support disability. That is where, if you have an attorney, they will analyze that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my clients win, but the date is different from the date we alleged. And that's a real, to me, I don't play with that lightly, because I don't want to jeopardize appealing and then potentially losing everything, right? But with a heart transplant, you're probably not going to run a risk of being found not disabled. So should they appeal it? If you don't have a lawyer, I would send the decision to a lawyer to review. You have 60 days to do that. If you do have a lawyer, if they didn't discuss this with you, that's a problem, because you need to talk to them about it.
Okay. And then 2 more questions. I think I got most of the questions. I'm really sorry if I missed any, and I'll keep looking while he's answering the next 2 questions. So what if someone was like 25 when they had to stop working, and they never applied for SSDI, and now they're 40? Is there a limit to how long it actually has been since the last day they worked?
Yeah, I mean, I can pretty much tell you, and this is not a perfect formula, but they probably aren't insured for benefits, and they probably haven't been insured since 5 years after they stopped working. It's that 5 years is pretty standard. So if you haven't paid into the system, you're pretty much not going to be eligible for SSDI anymore. Now, there's 2 ways you can get eligible for it. Well, actually, there's really one. You got to go back to work and pay into the system. Now, if you are 25 and you're found disabled, okay, and you haven't worked in 10 years and you get back to work, one of the things I like about disability is it freezes your earning statement. So those zeros of not working aren't adding up and making you lose your eligibility. It's actually extending your eligibility. But that wasn't exactly the question. The question was, you're 25, you haven't worked in 15 years, was it?
Yeah.
You're not insured for benefits. So at that point, you're going to try to apply for SSI, but if you don't have, if you don't meet those financial requirements, you're typically out of luck.
Okay. And then the last, or maybe last question almost, should you apply for SSDI and SSI at the same time, and are they 2 separate applications?
They are 2 separate applications, but whether you do it with an attorney or whether you do it with Social Security, a good attorney should always file for both. Now, I'll know off the bat if one of my clients isn't eligible for SSI. Like, for example, if their spouse is working or if they have a lot of money in the bank, I'll know it's not worth it. But if you're not sure, yes, just there's a box you click saying, I want to apply for SSI, and then you fill out an SSI application. Yep.
Okay. And then one last question. So if you're approved for disability but not yet for Medicare, and you're also not eligible for Medicaid, the only other option for health insurance is fine, correct?
Yeah. So potentially, if you COBRA from your prior employer for, I think, 18 months might be the limit on COBRA. Mm-hmm. And yeah, or go on if the exchange is operating, go on and try to purchase insurance. That is the 2-year waiting period for Medicare is such a hot topic. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a whole lot of people. I mean, there are people who have private insurance through their spouse, and that's great. Or there's the opportunity to get COBRA for 18 months, which will bridge that gap. But if you don't fall into one of those 2 categories, what are you supposed to do for insurance for the next 24 months potentially?
Yeah. And then last question, just because I do think it's really important for you to clarify. So again, as far as like legal fees, the $6,000, is that nationwide? Like, that's a national law?
Yeah, that's a cap. So that's always the number that people focus on because it's the highest number. That's the most an attorney can get. But that's only if 25% of your back benefits would be more than $6,000. But yes, that is a really important question, because if you go to an attorney in any place and they want a retainer, get out of that office. We are by law only allowed to collect a fee. Number 1, if you win, and number 2, it's got to be the 25%, no greater than $6,000. So That's our deal being disability attorneys. That's what the government has mandated. That's what we have to do. So yeah, it's important that you know that it's only that one time only, 25%, no greater than 6,000.
And the client is not writing a check.
No, the client is not writing a check. It's the government. The government will withhold that 25% and then send the rest to the client.
Okay, great. All right, so that's all the questions. I hope I got all of them. There were a lot, but Lauren did put in the chat box their link to their website. So if you need more information, they certainly have lots on their website, and you can always reach out to them directly for guidance. Thank you, everyone who participated. I'm going to send out a survey via email in the next few days just to get your feedback on everything. And, you know, if there's some things that maybe were unclear, you have other questions about. But thank you so much for participating. And Tom, thank you so much. This was amazing. And I'm just really happy that we've, over the last year, really made this connection with your firm, because it's been really beneficial for our family. So
I appreciate you saying that. And thank you for the opportunity. And again, and I'm happy, Lauren, thank you, Lauren, for putting our website up there. Anybody on this call or friends or family, if you want to talk, we can email, not a problem.
Great. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the week and stay safe and healthy.